All right, what is going on, guys? Welcome to we'll call it a special edition because Ben has a special mindset of never drafting players that are older than about the age of 23, and he has also never drafted a running back. And we're also drafting on a platform that certainly allows you to get a lot of young players and a lot of wide receivers on your team tonight. Special DraftKings draft. So I had to bring in Ben Gretch, yards for Gretch. I'm using this moving forward now. You're the thief of signals and the thief of bananas with stealing bananas and stealing signals. So I'm super pumped to have you on and let you actually dabble in some of this. I'm waiting for you to Venmo me $10 for this DraftKings draft, yes. and then we'll get rolling, right?
All right, yeah. I mean, that sounds good. No, thanks for having me on, man. Like I live in a state where I can't do as much best ball drafting like you're kind of implying there. So I love doing these drafts with you guys. And I'm always more on because I haven't done a ton of drafts. I'm always more on the player take side anyway. Just I'm deep into that. I love drafting with guys like you who are construction savants, and like we're gonna build a good team. You're gonna make sure that we stay on track construction wise, and it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I always like drafting with different people, but definitely people like you that, I'm a football guy to, air quotes, football guy too. Like, I played college football. I'm like, that's how I got into this. Not, a lot of people got into it with poker or even sports betting or, they're just geniuses. I'm definitely not a genius. It actually started with football for me. And so I kind of grew into more of the game theory aspect. So I'm a little bit of the football guy at my core, but I also, that's not where I focus as much of my attention, especially after moving into DFS. So I really like talking with people like you that I lean more towards you. Like I listen to you and Sean, right? I listen to Pat. I listen to obviously Evan and all the people that are super smart in this space. And it's like you said, I think it's a really good dynamic of having, I'm just grinding these drafts. And so like I might even get like robotic, right, of structure or whatever, and having somebody to bounce ideas off of or listen to your takes as we go through the draft. I always find it to be really helpful. And then we also build like different teams, right? Yeah. It's like we always end up like we'll do a ship chasing draft. We end up with a little bit of a different team because we're bouncing different ideas off each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go ahead and get into this. There's a storm that's a brewing here. So I'm warning everybody, I'm warning you and everybody, like if I fade away or if the dogs start going nuts or something like that, we got a storm brewing here. So let's see if we can hop in one of these DraftKings.
That's great. If you fade away, I'm just going to be here without the draft, just a dog and pony show.
We'll just be auto drafting, and you just got to go crack a beer and just start talking about whatever comes to your mind. So we're hopping in. We'll see what we got here. 5 of 12. They usually fill pretty fast. So. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show. I wanted to do DraftKings specifically, because, like the Puppy 2 just filled today on Underdog. Selfishly, I have 100 into Best Ball Mania 2, and I'm trying to kind of save those final 50 for a little bit closer to the season to really kind of soak up as much of my competition edge as I can with those last ones, whereas DraftKings is just like it is so soft, and I think it plays into some of the strategy and stuff that we employed. So one thing I did want to ask you like super quickly is when you get into these rooms where that they're soft, like as it relates especially to wide receiver, right? They're pretty running back heavy. Like I've talked about, like you'll see, like we can even scroll on the ADP here. We're going to go down and you're going to see some of these dudes going in the 80s, right? Visca 85, Will Fuller's past 100. Rondale Moore goes at like pick 150. That they're soft on guys that you like, especially at wide receiver later. How do you approach that in terms of like structure and taking the quote unquote detours on the other positions?
Yeah. I mean, I think just practically sort of the way you would think about it is how I tend to. I'm more willing to take detours, right? Like if I could build the same wide receiver room later, then I'm more willing to take a shot on an early running back or even multiple depending on the build. Yeah. When you get into places where wide receiver can drive quickly, that's when you really have to hammer a receiver. It seems sort of counterintuitive. Everyone says zig when others zag and all those things, but it doesn't work at wide receiver. But yeah, like, I mean, the way that I'm thinking about it is like seasonal home leagues, or like redraft home leagues. Like I'll be a little bit more robust in the early parts of those drafts because I'm going to crush these guys in rounds 8 through 10 with really good wide receiver values. Anyway, I've done it really strictly before, and I basically have limited my own upside because I'm just so good at receiver, and then I still can't take those values in like round 9, round 10. And it's like, okay, well, why don't I take some shots at running back early, and then I'll still be plenty deep at receiver. So yeah, I mean, I tend to be a little more willing to take the detours. I'm curious, have you done a lot of drafting on DraftKings? How do you wind up building when you do them here?
Yeah, I have done a lot on DraftKings. I was trying to pull up really quick how many, because they just launched a new $5, which is actually what I've been pushing a lot of people to. Not trying to push people away from Underdog. We love Underdog. We love everybody there. The product is outstanding. But as you know, it's a little bit of a sharper room. You know, I mean, every room feels like a ship chasing room on Underdog versus on DraftKings. So I'm almost 100 in the Millie Maker here. And then I've been doing some of the smaller stuff that they have. And what I have found is why I asked you that question is actually because I struggle with those early round detours because I'm in such a mindset of actually what other people might think is the opposite. I see the guys that I have to reach for a little bit more on Underdog, and not reach. I don't think that they're reaches, but they go much later. CeeDee Lamb, even like George Kittle, even Darren Waller, these guys that I have to prioritize early in drafts on Underdog. And so I'm like not even really worrying about those running backs because I know what's going to happen at wide receiver. And so I kind of forced myself a little bit more, to take Antonio Gibson. You'll see Jonathan Taylor has fallen here too, like to, the middle of the second round. Saquon's a second round pick, a lot of that stuff. And on Underdog, I've still actually kind of been moving away from those guys. Whereas on here, I kind of forced myself a little bit more to take those detours. And so it's definitely my biggest struggle. I end up with a lot more like, hero RB, single elite, whatever we want to call it, solely because you'll also see later in the draft, it's kind of like the inverse. I'm like always getting a wide receiver I like, even up through like the 15th round. And but there, even in like the zero RB type of back, that archetype of back, those guys even dry up a little bit more. And quarterback, that's another thing we'll probably see here. Maybe not in this room, but people are really, really quarterback thirsty on DraftKings too. So I end up with a little less what you might think of as firepower at wide receiver, but it's because rounds 7 through 14 are so much stronger at wide receiver that I take a few more detours early. Usually,
and so this is closer to what a lot of these other sites have been for, other sites in prior years that have had best ball tournaments that we've built a lot of the analysis off of. And I wonder if it's essentially like this type of a room is where a lot of the stuff that's shown, for instance, how effective hyperfragile can be. Like I hear all that and I'm thinking through and I'm like, something, like a hyperfragile build makes a lot more sense to me in this type of a room because you can still build out pretty strong receivers. It kind of is tough on Underdog to do that at this point because we don't really know what that's going to mean in terms of wide receiver scoring because you lose wide receiver upside for sure by like round 9. It's really tough. What pick do we get?
We are 10, pick 10. So that's a really funny pick because on Underdog, you've seen it and experienced it that like that pick a lot of the times like the Tyreek, Diggs, Devontae will be gone by 10 and Kelsey too. But a lot of the times on here they will not be. Now they might be in this room like I'm saying this right and we'll see they'll all be gone. But to your point, I think it gives us a lot more flexibility picking 10th here than like you guys did the draft last night, right? And you were trying to figure out where to pick in the first round. And you were like, we know we won't get locked out of those guys we want in the first round with pick 5. But I think in this room, in pick 10, you probably aren't going to get locked out of them. But then even if you do, we have that fallback, like you said, where we know we can still win the wide receiver room later if we want to go a little bit more robust, right? And
that's the interesting thing when you talk about like Saquon falling to round 2, and you talk about Jonathan Taylor, Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are both on track to play week 1 as the latest, and Jonathan Taylor's ADP fell all the way back to the middle of the second round. He was like pick 6 a couple of months ago in like May. And now he's a middle second round pick, and there's really no reason for it at all. I mean, there's obviously the injuries, but those guys are expected to be back. So it's kind of interesting to consider, like a Saquon JT start and intentionally passing up some of these receivers would be, if we can then just hammer receiver, it sounds pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, it really is. My dogs are howling. You can see the storm. I told you this. I told you the storm is coming in, so you can see that my dogs are howling at the idea of starting robust. But that's one thing where I felt pretty passionately on underdog. It was actually fairly suboptimal to be going robust. Like, I still kind of like the single elite idea on underdog, but on DraftKings it has been. I'm a lot more open to, like you said, Saquon, JT, or whatever. Pick your two favorite running backs there.
Yeah. Zeke is sitting there. That's hilarious. I am not a Zeke fan.
I was going to say we've gone back and forth a little bit on. See, and there goes Saquon, which is funny. Okay, so they took all. Here's the question now. Zeke is there. Eckler is there. We talked about maybe JT in the second round. What are you thinking?
I mean, all three of the elite receivers are gone. I think you just have to take Zeke and start to build the sort of about the only place I would take Zeke is in sort of this robust type of build where we're probably not going to have a lot of running backs. We know he's probably going to get enough volume. He's going to get touches. I'm worried about the explosiveness. A lot of times when guys start to fall off and have the efficiency issues that he had last year, it never comes back at running back. Now, everyone's saying he's in great shape and everything, and it's a great offense. I mean, there's upside cases, but in this scenario, we can at least bank on the fact that they're tied to him for the next 2 years for a ton of money. They're going to use him. They're not going to not use him if he's healthy. So we're at least locking in a lot of touches. I feel pretty comfortable with his touch. And then Taylor goes. I was hoping to get Taylor on the way back. I would take Taylor over Zeke, straight up. I was hoping to get both.
Yeah, that's why, and that's the thing. I've gone really. Zeke's probably the one guy I continue to kind of flip flop on, and we can talk a little bit more about that after we make our pick. But I think I like JT over Zeke too. So here's now the question is, I don't really like, other than Antonio Gibson, I don't really want to invest in any of these running backs. So it would probably be like a Ridley versus a Gibson. Do you have a take between those two guys?
I mean, it's very close for me. I like Gibson a lot, but I'm very comfortable going Ridley here too. Or, I mean, have the tight ends go? Do you ever go tight end this early here?
I don't usually.
Okay.
I don't usually. You've got me. I want to try this.
Okay.
I want to try our robust and see how it works to see if we can still kind of press a wide receiver advantage.
Structurally, I think this makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think pairing Gibson with Zeke, so going back on the Zeke thing, I think a guy like Zeke is more, so like I don't want any part of Zeke at ADP in season-long managed league because of kind of what you said. I can manufacture the points that he's probably going to get, and I'm not sure there's the true dream about it ceiling that I really want from that kind of a pick. However, in best ball, when you get run out of those elite wide receivers early, there is value in having the guy that is just putting up a score every single week that's getting you something that's really, really usable.
Yeah.
Right? If Zeke's scoring 16, 17, 18, 20 points a week, yeah, it's not perfect, but like just being able to plug that in and then build the appropriate structure around it in best ball.
So one of the things I talk about in redraft when people ask me about zero RB and all these things, it's not just about finding a late round running back that like people are like, oh, you never find hits. And they focus very much on like the hit rate of individual running backs in the later rounds. Sometimes we get to James Connors and stuff. They do exist, obviously, but part of the point in zero RB and all that in managed is you're just trying to get a solid score out of your two running back slots over the course of the season. And really the way that plays out in a lot of the teams that I build that way in my, even in high stakes and all these other, seasonal leagues is I'm using different running backs at different periods throughout the season. I'm using a pass catcher at times to fill holes until I find a guy who gets a couple of spot starts because one starting running back missed a couple of games, whatever. That type of mix and match kind of puzzle piece in each of your running back slots, looking at them as sort of living, breathing slots, it doesn't work in best ball. You obviously still can do that in best ball to some degree. You're getting the best score, but you don't get to sort of play the volatility of the position throughout the season as much.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, a guy like Zeke, where you know that if he's healthy, he's going to get touches every week, basically all year, he does have way more of a value because you're not necessarily getting that out of anyone in the late rounds at running back. You're kind of hoping for spot starts and all those types of things.
Right. It's the exact opposite approach of what Hyperfragile tries to do at wide receiver. Just hope that the volume of guys you have it all plays out over the course of the year, that you're accumulating enough scores that end up on the right weeks to where it works out for you. And that's kind of like you said, that's what I can do that kind of at running back, but it does become a little bit tougher. That's also why it has upside, but like I am really like I haven't done really many builds like this, and that's why when we started kind of talking about it, and we got the 10th pick, and I knew that all these assholes were going to run us out of the elite wide receivers, I think it becomes interesting. So anyway, we're up on the clock here. Of course, they're starting to run us out, but we're still in a good spot with
my pick here is actually at running back. I think we go DeAndre Swift and start three running backs. Swift is a guy that shouldn't be going in the late third, and might honestly have a better upside case than Gibson. They're very similar. He's still a part of that group and that tier. This is a really good 3 running back start. You knew when we came on here talking about all the receiver value we're going to get. We're going to be robust running back truthers. I mean, that had to happen.
That's what I think it was Amico, and even like Josh Norris from Underdog has said it. We've been playing this game, touting wide receivers, pushing up all the wide receiver ADP. We're just playing the long game, trying to sucker everybody in to take all the wide receivers so that we can eventually come back and hammer the running backs.
Yep.
And now that's
what we have. We have a Zeke Gibson Swift start that's pretty sweet, and now we can. I don't know if you guys know the ship chasing term. We can piss yellow from here on out.
Yep. So I am gonna pull over. So this seems, if you can see who is available here, you're a guy, and this is a perfect example of why we can do this in these specific DK draft rooms. Because like you would know, in a room like this, in a wide receiver super heavy room, like DJ Moore doesn't fall to the 4th round. Right. Even like Godwin, right. Chase, Higgins, all these guys were still available there. So it gave us a little flexibility to really build out this robust team. And now it's over at running back. We're never, ever going to worry about running back really ever again, until super late rounds, if we want to take a dart here or there. And now we just hammer the wide receiver position.
I love our buddy Andrew Mackins is incensed. He just wrote, "What is happening?" we got a receiver on the squad now, Andrew.
What this is actually a good point though. When you take what I like about robust this way, like with Gibson and Swift, I think we agree. Like Gibson and Swift both have a form of a floor, but they're a little bit more upside bets, right? You're betting that they become the top 3 pick next season, whereas Zeke is like just kind of the floor play.
Yep.
And kind of combining all those together, you're getting like the best of everything that comes with Hyperfragile, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm getting my 15 to 20 every week from Zeke, and then I have my 2 guys that have a floor, so I'm counting on their score, but they also have this, this legendary.
And Gibson's a little of both. We're pretty confident. I would say very confident that he's going to get enough of sort of the early down work, the low value touches, all of that he can look like a little bit like Zeke, maybe not with as many touchdowns or whatever because of the offense, but then the upside is, does he get enough receiving as well to fill out this really great 3-down role? Swift is almost like the discount Eckler. He's going to catch enough passes. We don't necessarily know about the full rushing side of it, but his projection isn't going to look a lot different than Eckler's necessarily. Mm-hmm. And dude scored 10 touchdowns as a 21-year-old rookie last year. 21-year-old rookies, first of all, we typically don't see amazing year 1 production out of necessarily. Sometimes we do, obviously, but they're young. We got to remember that, and then they're going to grow into year 2. Like we expect that. Yeah. He had 10 touchdowns last year, 43 catches. He's got the high value touches, the stuff that's really important, and he was explosive, very efficient in the passing game and in the running game. I think I don't like the Lions or anything, but he has a chance to be really good this year. They have a pretty good line.
Yeah, I admit
I like your
you
point.
You guys sold me a little bit more on. I was pretty out on Swift, and I think it was a little bit of laziness. And like listening to you and Sean talk about Swift, I was like, okay, they're making some really good points. Let me kind of reset my brain, go look at him a little bit more, go look at what he, even just like looking at what he did last year. I was just kind of like, yeah, he was fine, but he wasn't like anything special. And then, like you said, you go look, and I was like, damn, he was a lot better than I thought he was. Than I thought he was.
Absolutely. So you have basically two floor plays in Zeke and Gibson, and I would argue Swift too, but Swift is also a huge ceiling. Like, we have a really good balance with those three, like you were saying. I mean, ETN would be awesome here too, but I don't know that you want to go fourth.
I don't know. There's, Judy, Juju, Debo would be, I guess, the best wide receivers. There are the tight ends, Hawkinson and Andrews. If we really,
I would go wide receiver for sure. I mean, I'm fine with any of those guys at the top.
I kind of like Judy because I think we're gonna go so volume heavy at wide receiver. Like, Judy isn't necessarily my favorite guy, but there is kind of this, we definitely have an upside case with Judy just becoming that breakout star.
And part of his upside case is heavy volume, his receptions. He wasn't very efficient last year, but he did draw targets at a high rate. I kind of compared him, like, his upside to being like sort of like Deontay Johnson, who wasn't very efficient at the catch point and beyond, like yards per target type stats, but he was efficient in terms of drawing targets per out run were off the charts. Judy's were really good last year. And when we already are sort of thin at receiver, it's nice to have a guy that could be a target dominant type.
Yeah. So see, this is the perfect range. I'm gonna make a push for Debo here. I don't think I have to sell you too hard on Debo. From listening to you and your point about like you just said, Debo is just such an easy pick. Like, assuming health, which is obviously what we have to do for everybody. It's just like, what could possibly go wrong that you're just like so mad you took Debo Samuel? You know what I mean? It's just like DJ Moore. It's a lower upside, cheaper DJ Moore kind of thing. It's like he's small,
crazy efficient, over 2.0 yards per out run both of his first 2 years in his career. There's very few receivers historically that have done that and not been very good the rest of their career. The other thing is, that they use him on these jet motion tip passes, and he just gets literally free receptions. His catch rate is going to be massively higher than you could project for any other receiver because he's getting these basically handoffs that in full PPR count as a catch. He had some games last year where he had like 5 of them in the same game. You're literally getting like 5 for 50 that are handoffs. You're getting 10 PPR points, and he's going to probably do more down the field this year as well on top of that. But the fact that he gets used in that way and is very good at it, he's very good with the ball in his hand. As Ness says, he's a bully with the ball for sure. I mean, he gets these free points on those tip passes that's what I keep thinking about. Is just like, it's a very strong floor. It's a very strong floor weekly.
And like, to your point, we pigeonhole guys based on what we see in small samples of how they're used, right? It usually plays a little bit more to running backs, but look at Robbie Anderson last year. I know we've talked a lot about the Panthers, but like, we came into the year like Robbie's just this downfield flyer. Like, he's a great deep threat. We think he's pretty good, but like, he's pigeonholed into this role. And the next thing you know, he's the low ADOT guy. He's the guy, getting all these short to intermediate targets, and Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are the ones flying down the field. And Robbie was really good. We see Debo just getting touch passes and basically being used like a glorified running back, which is actually not bad for fantasy. People are equating it to like being bad or something, but like, we're assuming he can't go down the field. Like, why are we assuming that this stud athlete who's a total freak can't, catch the ball down the field?
Absolutely. And I mean, he does make plays down the field. You wouldn't have over 2 yards per out run just on tip passes. Like, the other guys that do that don't have, huge efficiency numbers because you're not, you have to generate big plays on your own basically. And he's shown an ability to do that.
Right. Isaiah McKenzie isn't exactly lighting up every analytic, and all he does is catch the tip passes.
Right.
All right, let's take a look really quick. See, I guess this is fairly normal, but like, we're into the, pick 82, sub pick 80, and Tom Brady and Stafford and those guys are the best quarterbacks left. The other thing I like about Debo is it keeps you open for Trey Lance, which is obviously my guy. Running back, we're not really worried about, but we've already pretty much hit this dead zone of meh guys. And we're still sitting okay at wide receiver. I am moving off of wide receiver so people don't see a couple of the guys that are there. Because that would be perfect. And this, again, I mean, I keep kind of saying the same thing, but this is why in these DK rooms, why you can experiment. Like, even if you don't want to,
oh God.
That is brutal.
That was hard. Interesting. We have Judy already, but Sutton is probably my pick here. I think he's fairly undervalued at this point.
I kind of like Sutton too. One thing else, Mike Williams got a hip flexor today. Does that do those kind of injuries? I'm going to take Sutton, but do those kind of injuries scare you at all in the preseason or camp?
A little bit, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily want to be drafting injured players, basically. Yeah. Like that becomes kind of a challenge. Although Sutton himself is not necessarily fully healthy.
True.
As he comes back, but yeah, I mean, Sutton, I'm very confident is good. Like, he's better than Mike Williams, basically. Yeah. He doesn't have a better offensive situation, not even close. Obviously, worse quarterback, all those things. But Sutton has been very good so far in his career. And I mean, we're kind of making a bet on the Broncos. We're making a bet on Bridgewater or Drew Lock being better than I think they can be. But those are correlated bets. If we're betting on Judy, like, I'm fine betting on Sutton too.
And I mean, Teddy, I don't think that we think that Teddy is good. I definitely don't think Drew Lock is good. Teddy supported, and there goes Mike Williams. We got Mecole, Waddle.
I mean, it'd be Fuller for me, I think. Now, do you reach? He's not going to make it back in this room, I don't think.
No, he isn't. Do you like Fuller over Waddle?
I do.
Okay. Let's take Fuller because it is slowing. The wide receiver room is slowing a little bit, so we still might be able to get one of these guys that we might have considered over Fuller.
It's interesting. The ADP here is interesting. I mean, Waddle and Fuller are pretty close in other formats, and certainly like Mecole isn't that far ahead of Fuller in other formats.
I'm going to answer this question because I have zero issue. I have absolutely zero issue doing with this, and I don't want to say I prefer it, but like I think people worry about that actually too much. And it's like, we've made our bet on the Broncos. Teddy or Drew Lock don't have to be like anything really that special in best ball for those guys to pay off. Like people use it, and I probably use it too much, but Teddy last year was like, you didn't care about having him on your team, but DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, CMC, Mike Davis, even Dan not Dan Arnold. We were drafting Ian Thomas. Like, all those guys were either drafted to be relevant or were extremely relevant with Teddy Bridgewater, and you didn't care if you had Teddy Bridgewater. And so I think people avoid it too much when in fact, like in best ball, again, we get to draft 20 players. If we make our bet on the Broncos, and if this bet is now right, like those two guys can both smash, or honestly, one of them can be a total smash and the other one can just be okay. And that's still a huge win for us.
Some of the stuff that we're correlating here too is like, maybe they just get into an abnormal number of shootouts. Maybe they are playing in a division with Kansas City and the Chargers. Maybe they get into several games where they have a lot of pass volume because they're trailing, and they get the right types of breaks in the second half where they build multiple drives late and get those really big play volume spikes, right? And then you can have games where Sutton and Judy are both good at the same time. Those are some of the things that influence, the end of season production at the wide receiver position, especially, but for any team, for any player. And so some of those things I think, kind of get like overlooked a little bit, but like that's some of the stuff that makes like some of the offenses vaguely interesting. Like, a lot of people are saying the Chargers are going to regress in that way this year because they had a lot of that stuff go their way last year. Herbert was very good too, but like they had like some volume things bounce their way. And anyway, I think that's another thing to consider. So yeah, I was looking at underdog. Fuller goes before Cooks, Hardman, Devonta, Waddle by a lot. I mean, or has been at least lately, but he's slipping a little because he's hurt. But yeah.
I've been smashing him on. Well, I take him on underdog too, but I've been smashing him. So I was more than happy to take him because he's one of those where like I will take Will Fuller at anywhere at this cost through his what is it, 110, his ADP. I mean, that's just absolutely absurd. But I will just continue to take him because it's gonna rise. Like it's absolutely gonna rise. And then if it gets to a point where I don't want to take him anymore at cost, I can always back off. But like I can't not, once the ADP shoots up, it's like I can't ever get him at this cost ever again. So I'm just gonna keep taking him.
I think that makes perfect sense. How many receivers do we have at this point?
5, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not sitting perfect at receiver, but we're not sitting bad at all.
No.
Especially for the 3 running back start to get 5 before sort of the tier break, in my opinion. We're kind of the tier breaks.
Yeah, like it's kind of like Mecole almost, because like I like Hardman fine.
But he is
fine, but he's like he's still like a little bit of a dream about it type case.
Absolutely.
So since we do kind of hit this tier break, what pick is this? 106. So we do have a lot of the upside quarterbacks available to us. Tight ends a little gross.
There's a player that I have in mind that I'm going to try and sell you on.
Perfect. What's this? Alex Berg. Listen, I tried to make
that was the player, Marquise Brown. I mean, Bateman's out now. Brown's going to rise too.
I know. Yep, he's absolutely going to shoot up. That's who I was going to that was going to be my guy too. So, oof.
I mean, Lance. We could go Lance if you wanted to.
I think we just take Lance here.
Yeah.
I know it's he's the 4th quarterback on the board here, but we're kind of at a turn, and we don't have.
He's been rising.
And we don't have a guy that we really love there anyway. So kind of just see what falls back to.
In some of my recent, definitely one of my recent main events, the draft last night that we did on ship chasing, that was a higher stakes one. Lance is getting pushed up into the Herbert tier, and then there's been a gap of multiple rounds after he goes before people break into Hurts and any of these other guys that are available. So I think people are starting to really push him up to a place where if you don't take him in this range, you got to take him a little bit ahead of ADP, basically.
Yep, I think so too. And I think it's only going to rise. I'm going to continue to try to take Lance. Damn it. I was going to say Parker because we have
Elijah Morris doesn't sound too bad, and I don't mind him, right? His injury doesn't sound too bad.
That's what I was going to ask. He's definitely my preference, but same thing with the injury. Are you okay?
Yeah. I'm comfortable with it. It doesn't sound like Bateman. Bateman sounds like he's going to miss a significant chunk of the season, maybe never really get back to full health. Morris doesn't sound like that, at least so far. Hopefully it doesn't get worse, but he's already been lighting up camp so much. He's already sort of got his position established. Yeah. I'm not really worried about him missing a couple of weeks here in August if he gets back in time for week 1 and is in full health by then, which it seems like he might.
Yeah, that is true. And so this is what I was going to bring up with Lance. Another reason why, yes, okay, there was Tannehill and Stafford or Hurts or whatever. First of all, I would argue that I'm not sure that those guys should even necessarily be going in front of Lance. But even if we set aside that, if Lance gets named the week 1 starter, anytime you're taking him anywhere near his ADP right now, it's a screaming value. He's gonna absolutely shoot up. Even if I'm not even saying that he should shoot way up, but he's going to. You're just not going to be able to get him where he's going right now if he gets named the week 1 starter. So same thing. I'm going to continue to keep hammering my Lance shares, knowing that if I'm right about this, I'm not going to be, same thing with Will Fuller. If I'm right about this, I'm not going to be able to get him at this cost. And you can always back off, right? I'm drafting a ton of teams. I can always stop. You can always stop taking him, but you can't go back and retroactively take him.
Absolutely. What do you think about how we should approach tight end from here on out?
So
probably 3.
Definitely 3. And my issue is that
they all suck.
Higbee's whatever, I guess. Gesicki, if he were to fall, would at least give us a possible Dolphins stack, right, which I don't hate. But like you said, once you get past maybe Tunyon, I think maybe Tunyon, it's what is the difference?
Will you scroll a little bit? I want to see. I don't know. I'm not familiar with these rankings enough to.
Yep. So
I imagine Irv Smith must be gone for sure. Though.
Yeah.
I wondered if he was buried for some reason on here. Okay.
Irv's
an interesting one.
I actually want to ask you about Irv because I buy the talent. I buy, obviously Rudolph being gone. I'm not buying the Tyler Conklin nonsense.
Right.
At least not, I mean, Tyler Conklin's going to play, but I'm not.
Well, I don't even think it was like nonsense. Like they ran a ton of 2 tight end sets, and what Zimmer said was, I don't expect Smith's role to grow. I expect Conklin's to. What he's saying is Smith already played a ton of snaps last year. If you go dig into the snap shares, he did. What's going to happen is Tyler Conklin's going to go from a 30% snap share guy up to like a 65% snap share guy. He didn't really say anything that wasn't true. We kind of were expecting that. They're going to run 2 tight end sets, and they're going to ask Conklin to be the other tight end. What Smith benefits from is rather than competing for these short area targets with Kyle Rudolph, this other tight end who's a fairly accomplished pass catcher throughout his career, he's now competing with Tyler Conklin. That is a boost for him in terms of potential target share and things like that. Conklin is not the pass catcher that Rudolph is. So there's certainly some upside there. You have Thielen's 14 TDs last year on like 70-something catches that are probably going to regress. You have Dalvin Cook leading the NFL and carries from the 3-yard line or closer. He had 20 last year, which is a lot of that is just the Vikings getting tackled inside the 3 at a higher rate than a lot of teams. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff is highly variable. My point is there are a couple players on the Vikings that could lose some short area touchdowns. Irv Smith makes a lot of sense as a guy that some of that could shift over towards. Like I like him. He's one of my favorite mid-round tight ends that could be a pretty solid value this year.
Right. And I think people misconstrue the fact that he probably doesn't have the, top 5 season in it. But who does in this? Like, once you get to a certain point, like, none of these guys are going to be, I guess maybe I like to dream about it with Cole Kmet or something like that. But, really, what are we really talking about here? So
a bunch of them went off. What do we have at receiver?
Yeah, so this is definitely where it's getting
is
pretty
QB.
Still,
we could just go with Kmet. I like Kmet. I know it's early for him, or we can go with Gronk.
Like, what do you think? I was going to say Everett or Jonnu. What do you think about one of?
Oh, John is a good pick. John is a good pick. I'll take him for sure.
Especially just like, I'm sure Henry will be fine, but if he's not, then Jonnu's definitely
I like Jonnu in best ball too. He's an explosive player. Like he's the kind of guy that's going to have some TDs. He's going to probably have some big plays. He might do some creative stuff with him. Like the Titans did, using him in the backfield. If he has some big plays, it's great for best ball.
They already have. I don't know if you saw the clip that was going around Twitter. He's getting sweeps in the backfield already.
I'm sure he is. He's like a really good running back. He had a couple long runs.
What people didn't know is they signed Jonnu to play running back. R.I.P. Damian Harris. Hunter Henry was going to play tight end, and Jonnu was going to play in the back.
He's their most explosive back for sure.
He's their most explosive player.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So and speaking of, there goes Jacoby. Okay, can I sell you on Tua here as our second quarterback and be done?
Sure.
So as draft season has gone on, I've gotten more and more bullish on Tua, and I feel like it's way too much negative being drawn from the little small sample that we had last year on how he played. And every day we get, even I think it was today, Chan Gailey came out and basically said, like in not so many words, like, I can't believe we went to Tua, and like we were winning. We screwed our season by going to Tua. We built the offense around Fitz, which is what some people had already been saying this offseason, and Tua was lost. It's like he got no reps, and we just decided midway through the year, he didn't decide. The front office decided, okay, we're just going to start Tua. And every report you see, again, it's training camp. That is what it is. It's a lot of positive reports, but it's just like Tua looks amazing. And then you compound the fact with they brought in Will Fuller, who is probably, and we happen to have Will Fuller, obviously, and a guy like Will Fuller and a guy like Jalen Waddle just like unlock the ceiling of a quarterback, right? And like we go back not that far, and Tua was, you're a much better prospect evaluator than me, but when Tua was lighting it up at Alabama before he hurt his hip, he was like we were like, oh my
God. Guaranteed number one. It was tank for Tua. He was the locked in number one until Burrow had the greatest college season of all time and Tua got hurt. And Tua, even despite his injury, was a good enough prospect he had done enough prior to his injury that despite his injury, despite not doing any workouts all offseason, he still was right there and went 5th overall, right? Like the evaluators were still very high on him at the NFL level. So yeah, I agree with all that. I think he's a good play.
And one thing I disagree with.
We're not going to get perfect values across the board. Get out of here.
That's not going to happen. If you've streamed enough drafts, you know that nobody ever lets you get your guys. And the other thing is, DraftKings is absurd with the quarterbacks. Was I telling you earlier? I don't know. I lose track of all my conversations. But the quarterbacks, they're going to go, and they're going to go really, really fast. And so I'm willing to take. We didn't take him that far ahead of ADP, like not even 10 picks.
Perfectly fine pick. Yeah. In terms of structure too. Like, yeah, you're not supposed to reach for sacks and everything, but we needed another quarterback too. And we didn't. We're pretty flat at other positions. We didn't have anything else glaring at us. It made perfect sense.
Yep, and I also like it, like you said, structurally, because so we're done at quarterback. You know, we're not worrying about running back till super late, and at least we got a tight end that we feel good about. We know we're taking 3 tight ends, so now it's just like, dude, whoever the best wide receivers are, and maybe if we want to detour to tight end if it makes sense. And now we're just like set up structurally, even though we kind of dug the wide receiver hole.
Right. And one of the things that happens when you worry too much about ADP and value and all that stuff is you're like, I can wait on all 3 of these players till next round, but next round you can only take one of those players.
Yeah.
And so, like, if we want to in this build, and it's not like we had other guys that were targeted, but I'm just saying this is a mistake that definitely happens. We have we thought the other positions were fairly flat to the next round, and whether we took say a receiver last round and then tried to get Tua here or vice versa, doesn't really affect our build all that much. We're going to still, Tua was a player we didn't want to miss on. I don't know. I think reaches like that are perfectly fine. I think people worry too much about ADP value sometimes with stuff like that.
Yep, 100%. And like what you said about, kind of like a pocket of a draft and a totally flat tier. It was like we didn't miss out on anybody that we like really cared about at the next pick. But if we missed out on Tua, there's a tier break at that at that quarterback, right? You lose all the upside options, and now it's like, an unstacked Kirk Cousins or an unstacked Matt Ryan, which I just don't want any part of that. Okay, so we're up, and Everett is still here.
I think Everett's a reasonable pick. I'm not like super high on him, but I think he's a pretty solid pick here.
Or Gabe, I guess, would be the other.
Gabe Callaway's sort of interesting right now too, because we don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. He looks like their lead receiver, but
do you want to try Everett and then see if Gabe or Callaway come back?
Let's do that. That makes sense.
And now that
Komet
also gives us
go.
some flexibility.
We did lose Komet, but I think Everett and Komet are sort of a wash. Is kind of the point. Yeah. I mean, I like Komet more, but I'm very comfortable, especially again in best ball. All of Russell Wilson's tight ends in the past have had these high touchdown rates, splash games that are going to work out fine. Like one of my favorite things to do in DFS when I stack Wilson is to throw his tight end on there. I was throwing Greg Olsen on these, Wilson triple stacks last year. I mean, it worked a couple times. Like he has like 10 points, and you're like, all right, tight end sucks, and you got 10 points out of your tight end.
Remember all the Will Dissly weeks? Will Dissly, like 6 for 60 and a touchdown every week.
Jacob Hollister. Like he's all these guys. Like Gerald Everett's going to catch some TDs for sure. So did both those guys go? Gabe and Callaway?
Of course, because we can't talk about them. I don't exactly love Aguilar, Crowder. I know we're getting into the old guys.
Yeah.
Here. Well, what do you think about somebody like Crowder?
We already have more. I'm fine. We're low on the clock. This will be the first and only time that I've drafted Jamison Crowder this year.
We got an old guy. We're pretty young. We're pretty young here. That's not too bad.
What's it? I mean, we probably want to go 3 tight ends, right? So what are we going to do at running back? Are we just going to go 3 RB?
Well, I think so. We do have bye week. Twitter will come after us.
Yeah,
because Gibson and Swift have the same bye. But I do think it keeps us open to that. But it also, I would probably go 4. Just tack on one more guy.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that might have been the pick there instead of Crowder if we had a little more time.
It's pretty bad.
That's the other thing with streaming is we're sitting here talking. We're not like planning our picks. You guys are out here planning your picks. I mean, come on.
Running back is pretty bad.
There's some guys there. I'm not out on what we can do here with our next chances. Who do we have at tight end that we could line up as a third tight? I mean, are you? Again, I'm not great on the builds, but if we go 4 running back, can we go 3 tight end and 2 QB? Yeah. Can we go 3 tight end? Yeah.
Yes.
So like Hooper and Ertz are. I mean, we sort of have our are kind of splash week upside plays in Jonnu and Everett, I would be looking at guys like Hooper and Ertz who are boring target getters that would fill out this three tight end build pretty nicely.
I like that. I can't believe it, but like I was so out on the Ertz thing, and Pat won't stop talking about it.
Yep.
And he started to sell me a little, and I was still out on it. And then I did a show with Davis this morning, and Davis is pitching me on it, and I'm like, all right. You guys are making a little bit of sense here, and now I've done like 3 drafts today, and I took Ertz twice in 2. All right, so here's another thing that you'll see on DraftKings. Again, that's very different from Underdog. Is like I know we kind of started to get run out of wide receiver, but there's just this one huge, massive tier after like. Let's call it Jacoby Myers. After Jacoby Myers, it's like nothing but everybody is the same. And we like a lot of those guys, right? Like pick your upside later round guy. And so we've set ourselves up to just like start picking these dudes off, you know?
Yep.
All right, pick 178 is our next pick, and it is absolutely hilarious that David Johnson is still on the board.
I mean,
that's so funny.
I want nothing to do with that pick, and at the same time, I don't know how I could convince you to take the running back that I want to take him over David Johnson. I think that would be a mistake. So somebody take David Johnson so we can take the guy that I want to take. Please. What the hell?
He's going to go 60 plus picks after ADP. That's great. There's
so James White would have been one of the ones that I think a good pass catching back would have made a lot of sense here.
Yep.
The other one is the obvious one that they're talking about in the chat. But I mean, I think you take David, and Gio went. Gio is the pick that I really wanted. So we're taking David Johnson. And
oh my God, this is hilarious.
This is not what I anticipated happening. This feels like one of Pete's randomizers. Like we got forced into taking an old running back.
Yeah. Don't complete your prompt or take the how old is DJ? I don't even know. Super old running back on maybe the worst team in the history of the NFL.
But like he closed the season well last year. There is some cases for him. I mean, he's going to play. He's going to be their lead back. It's not like, Mark Ingram's just as old as him. It's not like Philip Lindsay's going to completely take over the backfield or anything. It's weird. I mean, we could grab the tight end or we could go with a young receiver. What do you like more?
I think I prefer Amon-Ra.
So I like Diami here over him quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's Diami, especially because, again, same thing. He has a 200 ADP on, which is absolutely laughable.
Yeah. He's going to go higher here. Yeah.
He goes in like the 13th or 14th round on Underdog now. And again, in this room, there's absolutely no way he makes it.
I don't think people are going to just miss on that. As soon as you can see his name on the screen, he's sure to go pretty quick.
Right. But that's what you see. Like on this platform, you can see you can get Diami super late. There's a bunch of other guys that I'm sure we'll talk about as this is going as our picks approach that are these late round. They're young receivers. Super late round picks that make this structure more viable. Like you're never going to be able to attach Diami onto an underdog team when you go robust because he's not going in the 17th round. It's just such a different game.
Yep.
And so I don't know if Ertz will get back to us, especially because we talked about him.
Hooper just went.
But you can attack. What I do like about 3 tight end builds is I do think you can take kind of 3 swings, if I like Mo Alley Cox, or if we want to take Donald Parham,
sure.
OJ Howard, guys like that.
Yeah. It's not a position where if you take a couple of, 4-point weeks, you're buried because there's weeks where there's only a few tight ends that even score 10 points,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Like there might be some weeks where like 3 guys in the whole league score 10 points.
Right, and one of them's a first-round pick.
Right.
Let's take a look at wide receiver. Oh my God! So I'm not naming any names, but you've been the anti Van Jefferson guy, and I agree. I'm not a Van Jefferson guy, but there was somebody that put out today on Twitter that I almost tagged you, but I didn't want to like start ruffling anybody's feathers. They called Van Jefferson like the sleeper pick of 2021.
I mean, it's so funny. I've been hammering Van Jefferson. All he has to do is catch like 3 touchdowns, and people are gonna be like, "You were wrong." Like what was the point of me hammering against Van Jefferson? But I do think he's a bad pick.
What do you think about this? I have a lot of Mo Alley Cox, mostly earlier on, and then he rose up a little bit. Now he's back down to
They use multiple tight ends. I think the rookie Kylan Granson will get some opportunity. Last year it wound up being sort of Trey Burton got the most, but like Doyle's going to catch some passes. I think they're going to use Granson. I think they're going to use Mo Alley Cox. I don't think he's going to have like a full workload or anything. They're going to rotate, but he's going to be efficient, and he's fine. Like he's a fine pick for sure. So wait, back on receiver, there was a couple there that Ertz just went one pick ahead of us. That's amazing. Zacchaeus, I think, is a better play than Russell Gage by a lot because you can get him late, and he's probably going to start on the outside. He actually, I think, has some upside. Do
you like him or DPJ?
DPJ is the only other one on this list. I would take DPJ too if you want it, if you prefer.
Let's do that. Let's do Zach. Okay. I mean, one of these guys is going to take DPJ now, and that's okay. But
he was the other one that I was looking at, though. DPJ's a good pick at this point too. I just think if Beckham is healthy, if Landry is healthy, those guys dominate targets. DPJ only got like 20 targets last year. I don't know if that's right or if I was thinking of a different player. I literally think it was 20 targets even. I mean, he's good. He's going to be good. He's going to get some deep threat, some deep shots. Yeah, he had 20 targets, 14 catches last year. Very efficient, over 15 yards per target. He hit on some long touchdowns. But my point is they run a lot of 2 tight end sets. If you have Landry and Odell Beckham and 2 tight ends and a running back, and they run a lot of 2 running back sets because they get Hunt and Chubb on the field at the same time. There's not a lot of sets where they bring in a third receiver, and they kind of have 2 dudes that are their 2 receivers. So I don't know. I don't know if his role is going to be quite what we're kind of hoping for. We're on the clock here. Do you want to grab it?
Wide receiver's pretty bad. Do you want to grab one of these tight ends?
Yeah,
or running
we can do Mo Alley. Do Mo Alley.
Let's do Mo Alley. I assume he's still here. Yeah, let's do Mo Alley. I guess we can because he won't last again now that we already brought him up. We can look at running back really quick in case we want to detour to running back. I have gotten, again, now we'll talk about them and they'll go, but that's okay. I have gotten a little bit back more on, I keep going back and forth on these Chargers guys. I've gotten a little bit more back on Justin Jackson. I just know no matter what I do, I'll probably be wrong. But like you made the point, like Swift is Eckler of the Lions, but that inherently means that there's somebody else that is the other guy, and we know that that's true for the Chargers. But those guys like barely.
There's gonna be value in the Chargers backfield from draft season. The only reason these guys are going so late is we don't know who it is, but it's an absolutely smart one to target, smart backfield to target, whether it's Jackson or Kelly or Roundtree, whoever your flavor is. I like Jackson. You're thinking of a 5th running back here. Where are we at?
No, we took. Oh my God. I never take David Johnson, and now there goes Justin Jackson anyway. I was literally thinking that we still only had 3. Well, we really do. I mean, the 4th one is David Johnson. So
right, that's true. So we have
let's just start adding some wide receivers. Yeah. We got it's 2 wide receivers, so we'll be 2, 4, 11, 3.
I love it. I love 11 receivers. That's beautiful. I mean, like, you want to just like start scrolling through and naming Adam Humphries is vaguely interesting. I don't know. We took Diami.
Put Fulgham on here. Humphries.
Fulgham's going to get beat out by Quez Watkins, but that's okay.
We can put Quez Watkins on.
Quez Watkins is dope.
He's down here. I took him once too because
Tyron Johnson. I like.
Tyron Johnson.
These guys are all going to go. It's going to be so funny.
I know. We're going to add like 20 guys to the queue, and they're somehow all going to go.
They're all going to go. I mean, this isn't like the best. I mean, Eskridge is fine for me for sure.
Yeah, Eskridge. What do you think about Anthony Miller now that he's in?
Yeah, he's vaguely interesting for sure. Humphries just went. We're going to start. Our queue is going to be empty by the time we fill it up. Yeah, I think Miller's vaguely interesting. Yeah, the young Lions guys are interesting. Cephas and St. Brown already went, but I don't mind betting on Cephas a little bit in these really late rounds.
There's Watkins.
Watkins is the super sleeper. Colin Johnson. I mean, Tylan Wallace is interesting now with Bateman out.
Yeah.
Wallace was a really good prospect that no one's talking about and no one has talked about because his landing spot was A, terrible on a run first team, and B, behind another really interesting rookie receiver that anyone who would talk about Tylan Wallace, analytics type people, like even more because Rashad Bateman was an analytics darling himself. So, but now that he's hurt, there's an opportunity for Wallace to play a little bit in his rookie year.
Yeah, he was, if anybody played college football DFS, Tylan Wallace was just an absolute smash like every week. All right. I'm going to say Tyron Johnson here.
That's where I'm at too. I like Tyron a lot. He was really efficient last year. And
again, Mike
I don't
Williams,
think Josh Palmer's very good personally.
And Mike Williams is already banged up. He's older. They didn't re-up his contract. There's I kind of like Mike Williams this year, just like as an upside play in an offense that that we like. That there's
he's never been a target dominant player, and they lost Henry. Like there is an available role here for the third receiver. That's why people are talking about Josh Palmer, but I think it might be Tyron Johnson. He was good last year, and he's bigger and athletic. Like he was like really efficient on the limited work he got last year.
Another Oklahoma State guy. Same thing. They just churn out the monsters on the outside.
He's OSU. I didn't know that actually. That's awesome.
He played with I think he played with Tylan Wallace for a year. Okay, back on the clock. Last pick. Mine would be Colin Johnson, I think, here out of these guys. But do you have a preference?
I don't. Any of these guys are fine by me.
Let's take Colin Johnson. He's become my new pet. My new pet pick. I was originally only taking him when I would take Lawrence in the 18th. Shout out Peter Overzet. He actually put me on Colin Johnson. I think it was a super sharp take. And I know it's early. We haven't even had the preseason yet, but every day goes by and Colin Johnson is still running with the ones. And there's more and more positive reports. There's more and more negative reports about DJ Chark. And I know we like DJ Chark and he's fine. But like Urban Meyer, I'm not trusting Urban Meyer as far as I can throw him. He has no allegiance to DJ Chark. There's absolutely no reason that Colin Johnson can't just take his job.
And it's interesting that he's specifically called out Chark for not being physical enough. And Johnson's 6'6", 222. Chark's 6'4" and sub 200. He's not much shorter, but a lot thinner. Like Johnson's this bigger receiver that was pretty good at Texas. I mean, he had a pretty decent prospect profile himself. So. Yeah, I like it. He could definitely be used as sort of a jump ball receiver in the red zone. So,
what I love about what we did, when you're just going to hammer these wide receivers, I think people fall in love with like the safety picks. Like, okay, this guy's going to have a role, and that, give me the. And I actually like Adam Humphries, so he's not the best example, but give me the
Anthony
Adam Humphries.
Miller.
Anthony Miller's another example. Just give me the guy that I hope can get me, 4 for 50 in a week. But like what you really want is to find Chase Claypool here.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what turns your robust team into a total smash because you don't want to string together 10-point weeks out of these guys. You want to find Chase Claypool and T. Higgins here. And now you have, 4th round wide receivers with your top 3.
And that's what like, to a smaller degree, but that's what Tyron Johnson could be, right? That's what Colin Johnson could be if there's some injuries there. It's not really Zacchaeus, I don't think. Zacchaeus is more of a volume play in that regard, but Diami definitely is that too. And we got Crowder. I mean, we have so much receiver depth. This team's pretty sick.
But it just like goes to show you, right? Like we talk about wide receivers and stuff all the time, and that was kind of why I actually wanted to because it's a funny bit because people, we're the wide receiver people and they thought we were going to come in and just take like 9 straight wide receivers and we start running back.
And we might have in a certain setting.
We also got ran out of we kind of got backed into the corner. But like I like to build some different kind of teams, and then you see like we still went wide receiver heavy, right? Like just because we didn't start wide receiver, and then we took the right archetypes of guys that fit all this, right? DJ Moore, upside bet. Jerry Jeudy, upside bet. Debo is a little bit of both. Sutton, upside bet. Will Fuller, upside bet. And then you stacked Lance and you stacked Tua, right? And you built out your tight ends with a combination of kind of upside, floor, whatever. And so I think it's just like a really, really well-built team. And we did kind of, you brought up like, people misconstrue zigging and zagging, but we did also like still read the room. I thought I was kind of excited when we're like, okay, let's take Zeke. And we're like, oh God, I really don't want to take Zeke, but like excited to see how it would turn out with all these kind of flyer wide receivers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love Zeke there. I think the reason we did it, obviously, was that the top 3 tight receivers are gone, and we're sitting there at the end of the first round, and it's like, okay, we can take 2 pretty good running backs, and then at the end of the third, Swift just shouldn't be there. So we're in this like position where we can build with 3 really good running backs to start. The interesting thing about the Zeke pick is everyone is on the Dallas passing game, but Dak does have some legitimate shoulder concerns, going in for another MRI, all these things. We have none of the Dallas passing game on this team, but we do have Zeke. Like, we have sort of this leverage build where what if they're not a really pass heavy team? What if Dak's shoulder injury legitimately limits their passing volume for half the season? I mean, that's, I don't think, out of the equation at this point right now.
Yeah.
And so then you get into, well, okay, are they running a ton? Are they using both Zeke and Pollard and running a lot? Like, wouldn't be that crazy. They were that team 3 years ago. So
that's such
the Denny Carter bit.
That is such a good comment. Let's see. Sauce my team. Is your name run the bases? Yeah, run the bases. All right. Yes. The 0 RB.
RB team. Well, Kelsey, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I'm not going to sauce that too much. It's a good start.
Nope. I will say, like, you guys took Damian Harris last night. I really don't like Damian Harris at cost on a full PPR site. I know I kind of, sometimes contradict myself because I actually like some of the guys where like people write off what they can and cannot do in terms of pass catching, or right. The AJ Dillon is a great example of that. People write off like, oh, he didn't catch passes in college, so he can't catch passes in the NFL. And I don't believe that to be true. Damian Harris, however, I think has a lot tougher paths to realizing that upside. It's not that it's not possible. It's that you're paying for this, rushing, in between the 20s carries. There's cam concerns at the goal line. And so I'm okay buying him.
Just look at the history of the 2 teams. The Patriots have always used a pass catching back. They still have James White on the roster. They've always had a guy like that. Like, since the beginning of Belichick's tenure, it was Kevin Falk. Like, they always had a dude like that. And they've had these backs like Harris that they didn't throw the ball to, and they didn't throw the ball to him last year. It could happen, but that would really be breaking a mold. Meanwhile, Green Bay, most all of Rodgers' running backs and it's a different coaching staff, but over the years have caught at least some passes, even bigger backs. Eddie Lacy was a better receiver with Green Bay than probably should have been in terms of fantasy value. Like, he was catching some passes. They had Cedric Benson for a period, a bigger back that was catching some passes. And especially in scenarios where like Aaron Jones maybe misses some time, I think AJ Dillon is like a workhorse. And people are saying, oh, Kylan Hill is going to get the receiving. Maybe. He's a 7th round rookie. I honestly think AJ Dillon might just play every down. They drafted him in the 2nd round last year, and they like him.
There's camp reports coming out like you actually haven't heard a blurb about, oh, AJ Dillon looks good running between the tackles, but you've actually heard, oh, AJ Dillon with a nice over the shoulder catch down the sideline.
Yes, they're talking about the wheel route a ton for him. They're talking about him not playing in the preseason, which is everything you want to hear if you're an AJ Dillon stan. That like this dude's role's locked up. He doesn't have to earn anything. He's gonna play in the regular season for sure. They're not risking hurting him.
And Aaron Jones is already hurt. Aaron Jones is hurt already. So yeah, I mean I just get more bullish on AJ Dillon. Here's what I'll say: run the bases. I bet I would guarantee you would want some kind of 2v2 off of Lamar. There's no way for you to know, obviously, that Dak fell to whatever pick that was, 7th round or whatever it was. I know that there's no way for you to know, but I just don't think you want to be taking Lamar and Dak on the same team, 2 top 7 round quarterbacks. Other than that, I mean, structurally, it looks really good.
I wouldn't take Bateman.
I still have a real. I would be knocking. Bateman is not in Michael Thomas territory. Like I'm literally not drafting Michael Thomas. I don't even see that there's a payoff. But he's not in that territory. But I'm knocking him down like a lot because we just don't even know when he's going to get back. What his role is going to be when he gets back.
This is my concern. Is we already didn't really necessarily know what his role and all those things. But we also know that it's a low-volume pass offense. Like, there's a lot of scenarios now where Bateman doesn't get 50 targets in his rookie year. I mean, he comes back, he works in slow. You have to I think he's a really, really good player, and I think he's going to prove to be a really good player, but I don't think he's going to have a good rookie year. I think this is like almost takes him off my board personally. I'm a little more firm on that than you, it sounds like. But yeah, it's already sounding like some of the people that are like, the Twitter doctors are saying like, they're saying they're hoping they can get back in September. People are saying this type of injury, it's probably going to be October. What's he going to be as a rookie, going to be at the bottom of that timeline and then play a full sled of snaps the first week that he's healthy? I don't think that's the way it's going to work out. It's going to take some time for him to build up, and they're not going to throw enough. So he's going to, you're going to have hopefully some late season spike weeks, and that's about all you're getting out of him.
And it was always just a bet on talent already, right? And now you just pack on so many more concerns. Like we already had concerns. Like we all like him as a player, obviously, but there was already concerns about like, can he pay off a 10th or 11th round ADP? Like he might have been the third in the pecking order in a low volume passing offense already, and now you have all these other concerns. So I totally agree.
And you have the re-injury and all the things that can happen. It's really unfortunate, but I would not. I shouldn't say he's like undraftable. Certainly, when you're looking at the receivers we were taking in the last round, you would take a stab on him back there. Yeah. But where he's still going, he has not fallen far enough for me.
Yep, I agree. And the only other thing I would add is, there's in a vacuum. Dare I say in a vacuum, there's no issue with I'm drafting a shit ton of Dak right now. I'm buying the discount. Like if he's hurt, then so be it. I'll just eat the L on those teams. But I wouldn't do it just because I have those guys. We kind of already talked about the stacking without the quarterback thing. You have Lamar. If you need Dak's score that bad over Lamar's, then Lamar was a bad pick. You know what I mean? So you can still benefit from the Cowboys team even without taking Dak on this team. So
I love that he said appreciate the Tylen Wallace shout out. He also took Parham, Justin Jackson, Amon-Ra St. Brown,
my guy Darrington Evans.
This guy was watching the stream, I think.
I like Latavius. I like Rondale.
You mentioned Rondale in the beginning. I was hoping he'd slip a little bit. Yeah, this is I think he knows the room. I don't know if he knows me very well, but I love AJ Dillon, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb. This guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to get a team, a couple of streamers to like his team.
Exactly. He took 2 quarterbacks in the first 7 rounds, and we're still like, I still kind of like this team because it's all the players that I like. All right. Yeah. Pluston, you said we've been drafting a lot together. I've been it's absurd how many drafts I've been doing on DraftKings. So we got Justin Fields, Dalvin, Jefferson. What do you think about taking Jefferson at that 2-3 turn when you have Dalvin? Do you have any concerns on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would do it. And it's not that I don't think it can work out. It's just purely from the sense that I like Jefferson a ton, but I don't see him as like massively different than the other receiver bets that you can make there. And I think part of his upside scenarios are like, what if Dalvin Cook misses time and they go very pass heavy? The whole thing with Dalvin is like they're going to continue to be very run heavy. He was such a workload guy last year. I mean, he's very good too, but he has a very valuable workload that might be tough to match. And you're banking on that again. You're banking on them being very run heavy again, all those things. So Jefferson's path to success in an offense that looks like it did last year, where Dalvin's very successful, is really high efficiency again, which he had last year. It's a thinner path. I mean, you'd probably want them to pass a little bit more. So yeah, I think they're kind of pulling different directions a little bit. And since the other bets are sort of similar to Jefferson, I probably wouldn't do it. I'd go another direction.
That's what I think. I think if Jefferson, obviously you're not disappointed if Jefferson has the season that he has last year, but I actually think, if Dalvin is also going to have the season that he had last year, I don't think we quite comprehend exactly how thin you're drawing on a second round wide. There's really not that many of those scenarios, and there's definitely not that many of those scenarios in a run first offense with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. There's just a lot of ways that, and like you said, they can both pay off. I don't know how many scenarios they pay off together at at
Yeah,
cost.
it's funny. I made the same point last year with Henry and A.J. Brown. It's what it completely makes me think of, because I thought a lot of A.J. Brown's upside scenarios were like, hey, Henry misses some time and they go pass heavier. And they did both pay off, frankly. I mean, Henry wasn't an amazing pick in the middle of the first round. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but in full PPR, it really wasn't that great, even though he ran 2,000 yards. But he wasn't bad by any means. And in a concentrated offense like the Titans were, it can work. And the Vikings are concentrated. It can work. But I just would prefer a similar bet to Jefferson, because there are other options usually.
Yeah,
I don't know if DK was sitting there, or if A.J. Brown was sitting there. I don't know the exact draft order, but like those guys to me are right next to Jefferson, and they go next to Jefferson. I would take either of them over him if I have Cook.
Yep, I agree. So let's see, 5 running backs with Dalvin and Henderson. Sermon, I like Trey Sermon fine, but so this is where I probably differ from a lot of the market. When I hammered, 2 top 4, top 5 round running backs, I don't want to mix in Trey Sermon.
No, that's a receiver pick. Yep.
That's like
and
I know that
you have Waller early too here. I mean, you got to take a receiver there.
And the difference, someone might say, well, you took 3 early running backs, but Trey Sermon is not DeAndre Swift. As much as I like Trey Sermon, like you talked about, DeAndre Swift is a guy that could be going top 3, or God forbid something happens to CMC. DeAndre Swift is in the Antonio Gibson category of, are we talking about the 101 next year? And like I said, as much as you love Trey Sermon, that's not that. So let's just ride the Dalvin Cook and Darrell Henderson scores and just keep hammering wide receiver, because you were a little bit similar to us, not quite the same, but a little bit similar to us at wide receiver.
Very similar, really. If you consider the Waller pick, I mean, they had 3 early picks that were non-receivers, kind of in the same boat. And I mean, I don't like Mooney as the wide receiver 4. That's where it sucks. The Sermon pick would have been better served as a receiver.
But you did structurally
pretty
similar, pretty good, right? Took 11 wide.
Yeah.
You realized it. You took those 3. You really took a bunch of detours just like we did early on, and so you just hammered wide receiver.
And I think also the player selection, like Bryan Edwards, I do think is interesting. Nico Collins, I think, is a good example of if you want to say who's the rookie this year that could be the Chase Claypool come out of nowhere, it's probably Nico Collins. Athletically, very, very good athletically. Byron Pringle could have a better role and be sort of what everyone wants Michael Hardman to be. Pringle could have a better role than expected. Denzel Mims, I mean, is going very, very late because he's not running with the ones. A lot happens in every NFL season. I don't think the most likely outcome is that Denzel Mims is a 4th receiver for the entire NFL season. Look at Elijah Moore just got banged up today. We don't know what's going to happen. They talked about him being sick and all these things. It's been a bad offseason for Mims, but the fact that you can get a second-year player with his athleticism where you can get him now, I mean, that's another dude that could be this year. Probably not this year's Claypool, but he did have a ton of volume last year. You shouldn't be able to make that bet where you make it. I mean, these are all good picks.
Yeah, I've gotten back into Mims a little bit more. I got luck boxed. Well, I don't want to say a luck box because I have a shit ton of Elijah Moore, but I started to buy back into a little bit of, because I mean, we're talking about 20 round drafts and he's a 20th round pick. It's okay. I wasn't buying him before, actually, when he was going a lot earlier than that, and now I'm now I'm gonna buy back in. And then of course you get the Elijah injury, dude. I know they restructured Crowder, but this is a bad team. Who's to say they don't trade Crowder in the middle of the season, So there's a lot more paths, I think, for Mims. But again, you're asking for sauce. Pretty good. I
took him. There's this Draft Sharks Invitational that's been running the last couple of weeks. I took Mims wide receiver 116 in that thing. I wasn't going to take another receiver. I took him in the 23rd round. It's this really deep format. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Why is Denzel Mims going that late?
And I've even kind of been the guy that was Pete and Leone and stuff were really what is your sorry, I read the wrong username here. We're he was really high in the ETR ranks for all the right reasons, right? Everything that you said about last year, prospect, blah blah blah. But then the early reports were really bad, and I was like, guys, I don't think you need to keep taking him in the 14th round or whatever, And so now he's fallen, but now it's now's the time to buy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Now's the time to get some exposure for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's see what we got here. Kyler, another.
He's no worse of a bet than the dudes that we took at the end of our draft.
That is a fact. All right, 2-6-9-3, mostly 0 RB. Gaskin. What are you doing with Gaskin?
I don't know.
He's tough.
he's
tough.
I don't know, man. There's not a lot of things there's not a lot of players or NFL situations that I don't have a lot to say about. But Gaskin is like, honest to God, like he could be Arian Foster, right? Like, I mean, maybe not that good, but this guy that sort of came out of nowhere. He had the production profile in college, 4-year player at UW. I got the UW helmet on the shelf back here. Big fan of Gaskin in college, and he set the Washington record for, total yards, all these things. 4-year 1,000-yard rusher, I think it was. Like that, those things tend to show up. Actually, we don't really realize this, but at running back, like the ability to be sort of a workhorse is kind of a skill. Those things tend to show up as undervalued in the draft. And he goes in the 7th round, doesn't play it all his rookie year. Second year he comes out, he's obviously won the job out of camp. We didn't hear enough about it, but in week 1 he was like their starter, and he does it the whole year and is good, is efficient. There's not really anything in the way of him continuing to do that this year. At the same time, there were reports that Denver traded up to get Javonte Williams because they thought Miami was going to take Javonte Williams. They've been linked to some other running backs, usually 7th rounders or UDFAs. Like we talked about this with James Robinson. They don't, even if they're good, they don't get a long leash, unfortunately, at the NFL level. Teams just don't commit to those guys. They try to find someone they think is more explosive or more of a game changer at that position. But Miami has done things sort of differently. They've been pretty analytically focused. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if they kind of just commit to Gaskin. So, like, there's on its face, he's a dead zone running back with no draft capital who had one good year, came out of nowhere last year, and you fade him, right? But then at the same time, it would not really surprise me if he had another 250 touch season and was like one of the dead zone running backs that worked.
He's a guy I feel like I've made a little bit of a mistake on. Luckily, he's only fallen really in ADP, so there's time to kind of recover. Everything that you just said, I couldn't possibly agree more. And just to add to it, it's like there's a real payoff here. The reason why these dead zone running backs are dead zone running backs is because even in the dream about it scenario for them, who gives a shit? Like they didn't do anything for you. You know what I mean? David Montgomery, I know people would get mad because David Montgomery last year like kind of paid off. But like last year was last year. They brought in Damian Williams. Cohen is maybe back. We'll see. Whatever. There's not even really a scenario in which David Montgomery like really pays you off. Myles Gaskin, like you said, could be Arian Foster, where who's to say we're not taking him in the 1st round next year? Maybe he's a workhorse back on this offense that's taken a huge leap, right? 2nd year with Tua. They have Will Fuller. They have Jalen Waddle. They have athletes everywhere. And he's playing passing downs. He's getting the goal line carries. Like this could be a guy we're talking about next year. Like why the hell was he going in the 6th round? You know what I mean? And so like he's been maybe the biggest struggle for me in like the entire player pool. So I'm just trying to force myself to get exposed.
I will say I don't think his upside is going to be Arian Foster in terms of just like pure production. And I don't think you're saying that either. Just to totally clarify that point, I'm just saying in terms of the UDFA that came out of nowhere and then just established himself over multiple years as the starter, he kind of has that potential because they didn't really add anything that competes with him. The thing I always say about the dead zone is the guys that are bad picks are the ones that are pushed up mostly only by projected volume because they don't have a lot of competition and all of these things. And that kind of fits Gaskin. It definitely fits guys like Mike Davis. Like we're drafting Mike Davis as a 29-year-old who's never really done much because his role seems wide open to him. And what actually happens over the course of a season is someone else emerges or things don't go the way that we expected in the fantasy community in real life. Because that's like, there's just chaos in NFL seasons. So guys like Miles Davis are the ones you fade. The ones that can hit in the dead zone are the ones that are pushed down relative to where they should be based on sort of their profile. Because of role concerns. So it's like DeAndre Swift. People are so worried about Jamal Williams and that offense, but nothing about DeAndre Swift himself is what – I mean, like he was the RB1 for some people pre-draft last year. This guy could be a superstar on his own merits, as good as he was last year and everything. The other one is Travis Etienne. Looked like a phenomenal prospect. I had him higher than Najee Harris. He's going 4 rounds later than Najee Harris or 3 rounds later than Najee Harris. Strictly because of where he got drafted. He literally went 1 pick after Harris in the draft. They have the same draft capital, but he's in a different offense that it's all projected opportunity that explains that gap is my point. Those are guys that I will take stabs at in the dead zone because those are the ones that have hit in the past, young players. Mm-hmm. And it's weird. Gaskin can fit into both those buckets. You can say he's only pushed up because we're saying there's not really a lot of competition there and we shouldn't really be trusting him as much. At the same time, you can make a pretty good case that Gaskin would be going higher if not for people sort of just like undervaluing what he did last year and how good he was for a lot of these reasons. Like the market has sort of shifted. I think if this was 10 years ago, people would be drafting Gaskin in the third round and it'd be an easy fade. But we're in a different scenario now where people are a little smarter. They're a little more wary of guys like Myles Gaskin. And because of that, he's like sort of interesting. Like he kind of looks like the guy that's being pushed down for those reasons. He's maybe the hardest player for me to get a strong feel on.
I think he is. And I think as draft season has gone on, we did the Mike Davis thing. Mike Davis was like the poster boy for that. Like, everybody got excited, when Atlanta didn't have anybody, they signed Mike Davis, right? We saw how good, how good he was last year, blah, blah, blah. So like projectable volume thing. And I was like, I have no interest in that. Gaskin has become the guy where I'm like, if you're going to take Mike Davis, why don't you just take Myles Gaskin?
Right.
They have the same projectable volume, but one has a payoff that I think is actually very real. And the other one, like, I just don't really see how Mike Davis pays you off. So I thought it was interesting because, especially in this structure, I think he's really interesting. Like, he went elite quarterback. I don't like taking Kyler without, and I don't think you got Rondale. Yeah, I don't really like taking naked Kyler, but whatever. Elite quarterback, 0 RB with smash wide receivers, right? Tyreek, Keenan, Amari, Godwin is your wide receiver 4 is beautiful. Okay, Cam Akers, yikes! That I think you said that here in the chat. So yeah, we'll just timed out, I guess. So maybe this conversation is off, so maybe this conversation is all for naught, but yeah. Other than the Cam Akers pick, I actually don't mind this team. That's really funny. Alex Berg, I think I've seen you in a bunch of drafts. We'll hit one more. Let's see what we got here. Hurts, ETN, Jamal Williams.
I love ETN it's Jamal. I thought it was Javonte.
If it was ETN and Javonte, yeah, this would be really sexy.
Yeah. But
Diggs, Ridley, Robert Woods, Pitts, Odell, Chenault. Who do you have? Hurts. Did you get? Yeah, so Lawrence to Visca stack, Hurts to Rager stack.
Yeah,
got
I mean, if you're going to take Hurts, I'm concerned about Hurts, but if you're going to take Hurts and you get Ertz and Rager, like, okay.
And he attached on Zach Ertz to go with Hurts here.
Oh, and he was it Quez at the bottom?
Let's see. Oh yeah, and Quez. I mean, I kind of like this same, like, the market's really down on the Eagles. Frankly, I'm down on the Eagles, but this kind of bet is a pretty fun bet in these large field tournaments. Like, take falling Jalen Hurts, right? Get your late tight end. Like, if Ertz actually smashes, like, he's clearly way too cheap, and then take this Quez Watkins flyer or Rager or both flyer, right? Devonta Smith is out. We don't even exactly know when he's going to be back either.
Yeah.
If they hit, it's actually a pretty fun stack. 6 running backs, good structure. Everybody, how am I supposed to sauce any of these teams when they all have like good structures, other than one guy taking frickin' Cam Akers in like the 8th round? They all look pretty good to me.
Yeah, this is a good team. Chenault, Hardman, Marquise Brown, even after those good receivers, kept going at it at receiver. Madison, Bernard, McKinnon. I mean, good. Hamler. I mean, these are all just good player picks too. I like this team. Yep.
Good team. So we'll leave it at that. And the other teams must be shit, because I like our team and I like these like 3 teams that these guys asked us to bring up. So I think that'll pretty much wrap us up here. Dude, thank you for joining me. This was a very, very different draft. Different than I do it. Different than you probably do it. Anybody that watches this is going to be insanely triggered because we started RB. So be prepared for any sort of flack on Twitter. I hope you're ready for that. But what do you got going on? I saw the newsletter come out. What else you got going on? Stealing Banana.
Stealing Bananas is a podcast. Me and Sean Siegel. Check that out. Stealing Signals is a newsletter at bengretch.substack.com. It's like $8 a month. And I just sent out all my projections today. I'm doing the team by team sort of Stealing Signals breakdown for the off season. We'll be doing that during the season every week. We'll be sending out my rankings here probably tomorrow. So yeah, go subscribe to that. Yeah, make sure you subscribe. Sean has said it. A bunch of people have said it better than I. So it's a resource you need to win in fantasy. I'm trying to take my managed leagues, and like I'm in a super serious dynasty league. I listened to all you guys' episodes on dynasty, and it was just like
I was like taking notes on the side, like while I'm listening to these, because there's so much powerful information. We got a group text with my Dynasty League buddies, and I'm like selling them on all these scoring changes and format changes and everything. So you guys have definitely inspired a lot of stuff that I got going on. And I think from a best ball perspective, you can learn a lot from these other from these other formats. I know I'm mostly focused on the best ball stuff. But dude, thanks for joining, guys. Make sure you head to spikeweek.com. We got everything running up. Everything is up and running. Rankings, tiers, a bunch of different cheat sheets to help you along when you draft, so you don't get scolded by bye-week Twitter, so you get the playoff schedules right. And of course, the Discord. There's a bunch of these sickos that are just like me in there drafting best ball around the clock, talking through strategy, talking through picks, getting feedback, all sorts of fun stuff. But for me, for Ben, I will catch you. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what Ben's doing tomorrow, but I'll be back tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys later.